Hello, viewers. Thank you for coming back on Simply Moms. For all our returning subscribers, thank you so much. We appreciate that. And if it's your first time today, my name is Leah. And on Simply Moms, we empower women, we empower mothers and families. Today, we have a very interesting story that we're going to share. And we have a brilliant guest. Her name is Alisa.
Hey, hi. Nice to be here.
Alisa, she's a mom, she's a wife, she's an author. We're going to go into this very interesting book. She's a national director. She's going to tell you more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Simply Moms family. We're excited to get into a discussion today about all things life.
Yeah.
I'm a mum. I'm a mum of a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Pray for me. His name's Jacob. He's a good boy. We had a very interesting debate yesterday.
Yeah.
And he showed me how he's grown as a critical thinker.
Oh, wow.
And yes, so I love Jesus.
Yeah.
But he now believes that he's agnostic. It was a very interesting.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a very interesting debate. But I was really proud about how he communicated himself. But yeah, I'm in that stage now of motherhood. I'm a wife. Second time around, my first husband passed away. We're going to get into that in terms of the book. But I'm a wife to Carlisle. He's an incredible man of God, encouraging me all the time to do the things that I want to do with life and in life, which is great.
Yeah.
I am a author of this great book, From Grief to Glory. It's my journey through finding joy after loss.
Yes.
And I'm the national director of the Christian Broadcasting Network in the UK and Ireland. We have a bold mission to see 1 million people encounter Jesus and become his true disciples over the course of the next 5 to 6 years. So through media evangelism and NISR and outreach. So yeah, it's exciting.
We have another guest in there.
We do.
Yeah, the noises, don't worry.
Listen, this is Simply Mums. There's children here. There's babies here.
Yeah, so Alisa is going to talk about... So this book is about, when you've lost... She went through a period of losing her husband.
He's busy. He's busy today.
Yeah. This book is what we're going to be discussing today. So make sure you get it on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's called From Grief to Glory. We'll put a link. Yeah, so Alisa, how was life before your husband's passing? I believe you're living the dream life.
Some people would say it was a dream life, but yeah, I was at a very senior role living in the US.
Yeah.
I worked for an engineering design company. I was vice president of a $30 million business unit. Had a lovely house by the lake, nice vehicle, nice clothes, walk-in closet, and just was comfortable. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, and I felt like I was living the life that was intended for me. And from the outside looking in, my sister used to say to me, if you want a good laugh, go back and look at the people that you used to go to school with on Facebook and see what they're doing now. And see what they're doing now. And my sister would say to me, you're that one that people look back and, oh, she did all right for herself, didn't she? So yeah, if you looked from the outside looking in, life was good. And I was happy. Jacob was doing well. We were really preparing for our lives in the US.
Yeah.
So by the world standards, we were winning. It was comfortable. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had choices, which was good. And our plan was to stay in the United States. Yeah. We had moved a couple of years before for my job. I'd been promoted within the engineering and design company that I was working for. I had reached this position of vice president for a $30 million business unit. And it was a big deal. And we were living a good life.
You must have worked hard for, to get to that level. How long had you been in the role?
I've been in the role for 4 years before I got promoted internationally. And you're right, it was a lot of hard work. 60-hour weeks. Just, yeah, making a lot of sacrifices that people will ask me, will I go back and change anything? And I absolutely would have changed the amount of time that I spent with my first husband. Because you can imagine trying to reach that level of position and success. It comes at a cost. And I always say to people now that that cost is time. It's time for yourself. It's time with your families. And so whilst the outside would have looked perfect, and the result was comfortable living, what you realize when you lose someone is that came at a cost of time. That you're never going to be able to get back with someone. So yeah.
Wow. And he was the one who was the main care of the baby at that point.
Yeah, Jacob. Yeah, because I had to travel a lot.
Yes.
He was the main caregiver, we would call it, and we made that decision for my role. We made the decision that he would kind of take a step aside with developing his career. Just so that I could develop mine. I was very grateful to him for it.
I know, right?
But yeah, he was, for the first 4 years of Jacob's life, I saw Jacob through a screen a lot of the time. And we chose roles because I was away a lot. He allowed me the ability to play good cop when I came home. And so he was a disciplinarian for Jacob. But yeah.
Which is the opposite in most families.
Very much the opposite in most families.
Yeah, wow. So, I know that he died suddenly.
Asthma. Yeah.
How was that?
Well,
Yeah.
that was a journey. So I'd just been promoted to vice president that year of 2015. And so he then passed away in April of that same year. And so the year had started just with so much promise and expectation. We were looking to buy a new house. We were going through the process of applying for our green cards. He had just been promoted in his work. So the year started with so much promise of what the year was going to be. And so the evening that he died, everything came crashing down. And I talk in the book about, very much right off the bat in the first chapter you would have seen, because I know people would be like, well, what happened?
Yes.
And so I don't want to leave them waiting to understand what happened. So we go right from the offset. We go right at the beginning. We talk about that evening, what happened, how the evening and then the weeks and then the months unfold right in that first chapter.
Yeah.
So you get a really good sense of the rawness of
the situation
and the suddenness of the situation. And I did that intentionally. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that people could get the question out of their way, but also understand that it happened very suddenly, although he had suffered from asthma pretty much all of his life and had been hospitalized a number of times. I wanted them to understand that we were there, myself and Jacob, by ourselves, and my family had to come in. His family had to come in because he was born and raised in Barbados. He had left that island for me. And then just the journey, the rawness of that journey from the moment that he died to the moment that we bury him in Barbados, to the moment that we then decide that come back to America, and on all of the different paths that happen in between. Because I often say to people, the first 4 weeks, so much happened in the first 4 weeks after he died.
I know, when I was reading, I was thinking, how did she manage all this? Because 3 days after you give your life to God, and then the next day you're doing this, and then you have to take the body to the airport. And then you have whatever at the airplane. I mean at the airport. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I would have managed this.
Exactly. But this is the thing, is that when you lose someone suddenly, or I think regardless of whether it's sudden or whether it is expected, the first 4 weeks or the first couple of months are just such a blur. There's so much going on. And I think that the cadence of the first chapter was intentionally written to almost show so much happens that you're not even processing at that point in time. You are just going through the motions and having to get so much done and having to prepare so much that you don't have time during those early stages of loss to really process the enormity of what happens. And I hope that people, and that you, when you read it, that you got that from the beginning. It was like this, whoa, that happened like that, and then this roller coaster of events then follows. But yeah,
I think the other thing that I got from that book that maybe someone else would get is like when you said, "I'm sorry if I didn't say I love you," all those things. I don't know, like we take everyday life for granted. It's only when something happens and then you're like, "Ooh, I wish I told him that I love him so many times." Or your loved one. It could be your wife. It could be your son, your daughter, your mom, your dad, whoever that you've lost. That's the point when you're like, "Oh, I wish I told them how much I love them. I wish they knew. I hope they know that
it's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Is that even now, I'd love to be able to tell you that from that life lesson, I do it now. But I don't, because life takes over. And you have to be intentional about making sure that you do carve out that time for your family, for your loved ones. And as I was saying earlier on, the biggest thing for me was I was so busy building my career because I thought we had all this time. That in that moment, in that split moment when I'm faced with him lying on a hospital bed, that's the first thing that I could say was, it's regret. The first thing that happened was regret. And that my impulse was to just, say, I wish I had, I could have done all those things. I agree with you. We take for granted in life the moments that we have because we think we've got so much time.
You've just said that it was a blur. You were just functioning through it. But how did that affect your ability to function day to day?
My natural makeup as a person is to want to get things done. And I always say I have a plan A and I have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D for everything. But I didn't have a plan for this. And so I just decided that I was going to just keep moving. And I had initially said I wasn't going to make any rash decisions in the first year of him passing. And then I made all of the rash decisions in the first year of him passing. But I think that, it wasn't linear. And it isn't linear because everybody's grief journey is different. And people say, there were so many people that said to me at that time, take one day at a time. And it used to annoy me so much because I'm like, this, do they not understand? How can I take one day at a time? I've got a son now that I barely even know. I have a career that I don't know if I can continue to maintain because it was because of my husband that I was able to have that career. We're living in the US. I'm so far away from my friends and my family. What am I going to do? And so it's really easy to say take one day at a time, but then you've got decisions that you need to make. And I think for me, the decisions that I made very early on was based on shock, emotion, grief, fear, so many, anger, so many different emotions. And taking one day at a time just didn't seem possible. But for those people that are going through their own grief journey, it is the most important action to do, which is to take one day at a time and try, certainly within the first 6 to 12 months.
How do you do that?
And that's the thing, is that it's so having people around you that you can talk to, or friend circles that you can go to, but just not making any decisions. I was in a different position to other people. I had finance that was afforded to me. So I had the ability to not have to make financial decisions in that moment. I had family and friends that I could come back to. I had family and friends in the US at that time that was there to support me. I still had a job. I had this little boy. So for me, I feel like I was in, and everybody will be in a different situation.
Yeah.
But I think that if I could, God forbid, I don't ever want to go back there, but if I could rewind time, then I would have listened to people that I trusted at that time. And so when you say, well, how people do that, there'll be people in your life. I pray that there are people in your life that you can trust that will be able to see things from a different perspective than you in that moment, because you're so filled with so many different emotions.
Yeah.
So if you are, if you're fortunate to have those types of people that you trust, that know what's best for you in that moment, rely on them. I wanted to think I was Superwoman still. I wanted to continue to act and operate at the same level that I knew that I was capable of. That's what I believed in that moment. But the emotions, the pain, all of those things, I was not thinking clearly.
Yeah.
And you are not thinking clearly. No matter how much you think you are, when you fast forward however many years later, you are not thinking clearly in that moment.
But you can't.
No, you can't, absolutely. And you almost have to accept that you can't. But again, you can't do that in that moment.
Yeah, you can't accept that. You have to go through the whole process.
Exactly. So, yeah, trusting in people around you to help you, and rely on those that you trust in your core circle, to be able to help you make decisions and take each day as it comes during that time, is what I'd say is to people in terms of how they would do that.
That's powerful. I hope you've heard that. But you also mentioned in the book where you had arguments about the husband refusing to take medication.
Yes.
And he preferred to have herbal rather than medication. What would you say to someone out there who might be going through the same thing? Because I know, especially Christians, we have this thing that, God is working.
Yeah.
So I don't need the medication.
Yeah.
And also by the way, he's not the only one. When I was reading, I thought, there are lots of people who are like this.
Yeah.
Or like, I'd rather take herbal, I don't need the medication. And there's some conspiracy theory about the medication.
Yeah.
Like, what would you tell someone out there?
Yeah. That's a good question. I believe that God has given a spiritual gift or gifts to us all.
Yeah.
And I believe that he's given people the gift of understanding what right chemicals go together to help us as individuals in whatever ailment or whatever situation that we're in. He's given people the gift of, he's given us the gift of medicine, both herbal and prescriptive. And I think that it's an individual's choice, but I think that we shouldn't shy away from the fact that there are medications that are chemically made and put together to help balance situations out. I believe now, I didn't believe it then, that actually herbal, organic, vegan lifestyles where things are, you're taking food that has been grown from a seed. I've actually believed that is the right direction in terms of medication for myself and for my family. I didn't think that then. And that journey has only really come through my growth as a Christian and my relationship with Jesus. I believe scripturally that God, if we believe in God, we believe in the creation and how he created the earth, the heavens and the earth, the plants, the seeds, the plants that are grown, and all of those come from a seed. And so my thing is that if he made every living thing from a seed, then there is healing properties in that. It's how we use it as human beings that become the issue. And so if there's someone out there that is thinking medication isn't the answer, I would say that's their own personal choice. I think if there are people out there saying that herbal is their right decision, that's their personal choice. I think there's a place for both in the world that we exist in. And I don't think that we should see any one as better than the other. I think it comes down to personal preference.
That's that.
I think that's a good question, though. I've never been asked that question before. And it's interesting because
when I was reading, I thought to myself, there is lots of people who are like that. So maybe there is something that from your experience now that you've gained from this that you could tell someone that could be helpful.
I think that my thing was this, is that don't not take something because it's been prescribed to you. Don't not take it because you want to go down a herbal. You have to investigate both angles.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he had continued to take the medication that he was supposed to take, whether or not he was still here. He would still be here. I don't know that. What I would have liked would have been for him to have had a conversation with me about it, rather than making that unilateral decision for himself. But equally, it was still always going to be his decision to make. And I think that is for anybody that's out there. It is that individual person's decision. But don't be, I guess, maybe selfish or uninformed in the decision that you make. Involve the people that you love around you, but also look at the pros and cons of both. There's arguments for and against for both. But as I've grown in my faith, I definitely now steer more towards herbal and naturally grown things. That knowing the source that it's come from. Than I do just popping pills and supplements.
Yeah, so grieving while raising a young child must have been incredibly challenging.
Still is.
Yeah.
It's still, people make the assumption that because I've written a book and because I'm now, working in ministry and I love Jesus and I've remarried, that I'm not still grieving.
Yeah.
I'll always be grieving.
I know, right?
I will always be grieving. I just choose now not to live in that grief. But I'll always grieve the loss of him. And obviously having a son for him now that's growing up, who looks exactly like him, by the way. He and I'm realizing has a lot of characteristics of his father, even though he hasn't been raised with his father at all. But I'm realizing how much harder it was now he's 14, and realizing some of the things that I missed doing with him during that period, because I just wasn't in a place to be. I wouldn't say I was a bad mum at all, and I think I've been a very good mum, but I feel like I missed a lot of the times where I could have been taking him to the park. And I was, deep in my grief at that time. So he spent a lot of time in front of the television. He spent a lot of time certain times looking after me. And so I realize now what I had missed, especially with my goddaughter, that I'm really very close with. I realize how much I'm looking forward to doing things with her that I didn't do with Jacob. Because I just wasn't capable in that moment. Luckily for me, Jacob and I have such a good relationship. But the journey that he's had to go through has now really started to manifest itself in the last maybe 4 years. And so I've had to make sure that he has had grief counselling. I've had to make sure that I've given him an opportunity, albeit a long time in the making, that he's got an opportunity to know that he can talk about his father. He has a relationship with his father's family, as do I, a very close one. They've been here to visit. He just recently went over by himself on the aeroplane by himself in October of last year to spend time with them there. He'll go back again in the summer for 3 weeks. And so that connection is still always there. But I definitely have seen in the last 4 years the impact of that loss on him as he becomes a man. And it is trying to identify who he is as a man with parts of my new husband, who's been in his life for almost 7 years, but also from who he is, paternally who he is. So yeah, it's been a difficult journey at the start because of managing my own grief. And then a difficult journey now later on seeing him have to go through that journey. But I feel like we're coming through the other end of it with I guess maybe with an understanding that his dad exists still. His dad is dead, yes, but his dad's memory is alive, and it's in him, and it's in the relationship that he has with his family. It's in being able to be immersed in the culture of the island, is being able to visit his dad's grave on that island. So I think that it's beginning to make him understand who he is, which is bringing him out of a chapter of his journey.
Interesting. When you've been talking now, I'm wondering, how do you explain to him that he's not going to see his dad again?
Oh, gosh.
Because I have a sister who's just lost her husband, and the older son kind of understands, the younger one doesn't. They told him the father's gone to heaven.
Yeah.
So when they were going on the plane, he thought they're going to see his dad. So how do you explain to the child so that he understands? He's only about 4 years as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't know how to do that. I had to go with. So when it happened, the next morning, and so you're reading the book how it all happened that evening. But the next morning, I had one of my close friends, come and take Jacob, and I just basically said that Daddy had left to go to work early, and that he was going to go on a bit of an adventure with that friend and a son that she had that was the same age as Jacob. And he went away for a couple of days because I had no clue how I was going to do that. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And so it wasn't until Benny's mum came over from Barbados and Jacob then came back to us that I was able to do it with her. And so she supported me to do it through it, and we took him for a walk together, and we explained that the same thing, that Daddy had stopped breathing and that he had died, and what that means is that he's gone to heaven, but it means that we won't be able to see him anymore. And I really wasn't prepared for what came next from Jacob because he's 4. Jacob tells me that he knows. He just says, "I know, Mummy." And I was like, okay. And the good news for me is that Monica, who is Benny's mom, was there. But he just said, "I know, Mummy." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Daddy came to see me in my dreams."
Oh.
Yeah. And so honestly, it gave me a comfort knowing. Now, that was in that moment. There were periods over the course of the months ahead where the reality of that started to kick in.
Yeah.
And I think that my biggest mistake in the entire grief journey was that I was too much of a coward to let Jacob go to the funeral. He was 4. He had these incredible memories of himself and his dad, but they have an open casket in Caribbean tradition. You have an open casket, and the dead person greets you at the front of the church, and everybody walks past and says their goodbyes, and then as a wife, I have to tell him to seal the casket up, and then he's brought into the church, and I just couldn't factor in how on earth I was gonna explain all of that all over again to Jacob. And also I didn't know if I wanted that to be Jacob's last memory of his dad. However, I think that we had our own closure ceremony, he and I, at one of our friends' house when we got back to the US, and he lit Chinese lanterns. We lit Chinese lanterns, and so he had a ceremony of sorts.
Okay.
But I wish I'd been brave enough. Remember what I was saying earlier on, where the trusted people around you, listen to them, because I had trusted people around me at that time that said, "You should take him. It's a process he needs to go through himself as well." even if I decided that he wouldn't see him in the open casket, that he would have at least seen him present with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, to say goodbye. But in that moment, you're so emotional. There's so many different things going through your mind. And so that's the one thing, if I say in my journey, that I regret most of all, it was not giving him the opportunity. And Jacob and I have had a conversation about that as he's older now, where I felt like I needed to apologize. But Jacob, being Jacob, always confirms things back to me. And he said to me, Mum, you know, I understand why you would feel that way, but my memory of my dad is me and my dad playing Mario Kart in my bedroom and you bringing us Cheetos in. Ugh, I'm gonna cry.
Oh, what's the...
And so I just haven't thought about that in a really long time. And
Sorry.
but I'm grateful that he validated to me that he has that eternal memory of his dad, which is, I believe, a better memory than remembering the last time that he saw his dad in a coffin. And so he's almost been able to release me from that burden. But in terms of him outside of the moment of saying that he knew, a couple of moments where he was like, where is daddy again? He made it really easy for me.
So you didn't ask about him again?
No, he because we talked about, he didn't need to. We were always talking about him. And I made sure that in terms of my own grief journey, even though I was going through different stages of it, but his dad has always been a conversation and part of our conversation, you know, always been part of our conversation. So it was never a case of, oh, where's daddy? He knew that daddy had died. He knew that we were now moving back to the UK. He knew that we were going to be living a different type of life. He knew it was just him and I. I've always been honest with him throughout the process. And that's probably one of the things I would say to people, is that we want to protect our children so much. And that's understandable. But protecting them without communicating and telling them the truth because we're fearful of that only harms them in the long term. And so we have to try and push ourselves through that place of communicating the pain. Because a lot of the time, like I said to you at the beginning, I was frightened of telling him. So I sent him away until I had enough courage and almost like backup to help me. But when I did tell him, like he released me from that. But like I said, Jacob is an extraordinary young man. He really, really is. Wow.
So what about therapy for them? At what point is a good time?
So I think it's different for different children. He originally went early. He went about 5, 6. And obviously at that stage, it's a different type of counselling that he's having. He's having play therapy, art therapy, having all those types of things. And then I left it for a while because I was then in the heart of my grief journey. And then I realised at 10 that there were things happening with him in terms of just different aspects of his personality developing, but also things that he was doing. He wasn't acting in the way that I know him to act. And so I made the decision and I sat down with him and said, would you like to talk to somebody? He said, yeah, I think I would. And so at 10, he went back to a child counsellor. Slightly, again, different, not as play therapy is, but still counselling in the right and appropriate environment. He had that for about 6 or 7 months. Then we move into a different stage just recently.
Yeah.
And so he's had stages, and I think that he will continue to have stages, and I'll be open and present enough, I think, to be able to... We have a great relationship because we communicate a lot. And so, and I also know and I'm in tune with when he's acting out of character. I mean, things might be wrong. And so I think that he's moving through this stage now because he's becoming a critical thinker with his agnostic self. But I think that he'll also move into a place when he probably maybe 16, 17, as he starts to now get ready to move out into the world, where he'll need more. And I think that the journey of therapy for me is continuous. There are different things that come up all the time in terms of when I was getting remarried. I thought I was betraying the memory of him.
Yeah.
I have to go through counseling then. Now I'm married and I'm trying to figure out how do I share this love that I have for my new husband whilst not putting away the love that I still and will always carry for my first husband. And is that okay? But also knowing that there's an element of that I have to close down. Otherwise, I'll never be able to give what I need to give to my husband. Now, so there's so many different stages. But what I will say is this, is that therapy, as much as my journey with Christ has been just at the center of my grief to glory story, therapy has equally been important. Again, remember what I was saying is that God gives a spiritual gift to us all. He's given a gift of understanding how to help people through the traumas of their lives. Now, I'll caveat that by saying that find a therapist or a counselor that is referred to you by somebody that has had that therapy or counselor, because trying to find the right counselor can sometimes do more harm than good, because not all counselors have a gift.
I know, right?
They think that they do. But it's like when you're at church and people want to be on the worship team and you're like, yeah, come, and then they start singing, you're like, okay, make a joyful noise unto the Lord and everything, but they didn't necessarily have that spiritual gift given to them. It's scriptural, right? We're not all prophets, we're not all, and so it's understanding that the people that have been recommended to you are the people that come with almost like a higher rating. Rather than trying to find someone that may take you down the road and a path that isn't going to lead you to freedom in your journey.
And then you talk about coping mechanism and comfort blankets.
I had a lot of unhealthy ones.
Coping and survival.
In the first 3 years of the journey. So again, you'll read in the book, there was this moment where I encountered Jesus in my bathroom 3 days after my husband had passed away. And then I didn't know what I was supposed to do with all of that. And then got completely consumed by the world and the world's comfort blankets. And got completely dependent on marijuana, on alcohol, on relationships with different people. Until I hit completely rock bottom after the first 3 years. And realized that those unhealthy comfort blankets, is what I call them, are really the enemy's way of making sure that you stay in a place of darkness. And really it was the Lord that that encounter that again you read about in the book, in the kitchen, where I truly surrendered everything to the Lord. And in the last 5 years my comfort blankets have been scripture, my comfort blankets have been fellowship, my comfort blankets have been finding a church. Moving out of the secular world of working into ministry, just growing in my relationship and my intimacy with Jesus. And those have been the comfort blankets that have not just kept me warm and safe, but have enabled me to grow and into the place that I'm at now.
But what would you tell someone who feels ashamed of how they are trying to cope? So in case they have unhealthy comfort blankets, what would you tell them? How would you guide them out of those?
Well, the first thing I would say is it's difficult not to tell somebody not to feel shame or guilt for whatever it is that they're doing. But what I will tell them is that in the first 2 to 3 years of my journey, I didn't know how to cope with life. And so I chose things that were comfortable for me. People will say, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that those things didn't give me comfort. In the moment, they absolutely did. But they were just the wrong comfort blankets. And I think that, again, it's those trusted people around you. There were so many I was so blessed to have so many people in my circle, my family, good friends, that were trying to tell me this is getting a little bit out of control. Yeah. But you don't want to listen because you're so deep in the loss.
Yeah.
And so it's going back to, if you have someone in your life right now that is maybe saying something to you that makes you feel uncomfortable about what you're doing. Because the beautiful thing with the people that I have is they didn't judge me for it, but they were concerned. But I took that concern for judging because you're in that state of mind. But I would say that if you've got people in your life right now that are saying things to you that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, I would say in this moment, lean into that uncomfortableness and maybe start to check yourself, and not in a way of saying, you know what, I just need to make sure that I don't do these things, but just know that that's a prompting. It's what I would call, it's the Holy Spirit giving you an opportunity to acknowledge that something is not right and that you need to talk about the fact that it's not right. So in terms of practical things, there are some exercises that I put in the book that are really starting to outline what you need to start to let go of. Because at the moment that you, number one, are getting so further down the line in terms of those comfort blankets, and as I said, when you get a prompting from somebody in your circle, or even within yourself where you know what, this is getting out of hand, or I'm not dealing, or I'm not gaining closure or coping, it's time to start to, from my own journey, write out the things that you want to start to look at letting go of. And being able to is the point where you have to start to lean in and make a choice of leaning into the fact that the person is gone, they're not coming back, but you still have a right to live, and you still have a right to be happy again. And so there's work that needs to be done in that process, and that work, I'm not going to lie to you or sugarcoat it and say that that's easy work to do. It's not. But what you see here now is a result of having gone through that work and making the choice to say, I want to be happy again. I deserve to be happy again. The person that I lost would want me to be happy, yes. But more importantly, I deserve to be happy again. Yeah, I deserve to have a life filled with joy and love. And really, is the life that I'm currently living going to lead me to that point? Is the dependency on alcohol going to lead me to that point? No. Is the dependency on marijuana? No. Relationships with other people? No. And obviously, as you read in the book, it takes me to a place where I'm suicidal. Yes. Yeah, I'm at a point where nothing else around me feels hopeful because I'm completely consumed by death and despair and depression. And so that's what those things, those comfort blankets, unhealthy comfort blankets can do. And it may not be as extreme as mine. It may be things like you completely become dependent on social media and just completely consumed in that world, that you're no longer living present in this world. You're looking at what everybody else has and comparing yourself to everybody else's life. It could be that you're consumed by food. You're comfort eating all the time. It could be that you're actually just consumed by avoidance and that you're avoiding everything and everybody and shutting yourself away. All those things are not going to lead you to a place of happiness. Yeah. And so, the book talks through and goes through exercises, but more importantly, it's understanding for yourself, even if you don't have someone else around you, are the things that you've become dependent on, are those things leading you to a place of happiness? Because you deserve to be happy again. And don't feel guilty about that, as difficult as it might feel in the moment not to do.
So you mentioned how you depended on God throughout this journey, even though you were, using comfort blankets, dipping in and out, dipping in and out.
Yeah.
How do you explain the experience of where you got out of that? Remember when you said that God told depression to leave?
Yeah.
How can you explain that to someone, especially when they're going through it?
Oh, wow. Getting yourself back to that moment. I think that the moment in the kitchen where I was getting prepared to kill myself, and Jacob. And I remembered the time that I'd encountered him in the bathroom 3 days after my husband had died. And I remember in that moment when I was in that bathroom, he had said, if you don't follow me, yours and your son's life will become as dark as night. And in that moment in the kitchen, 3 years later, I'm now at that moment because I haven't been following him. And it wasn't out of choice. It was, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. What does follow me even look like? And so in that moment, in that kitchen, I just screamed out to him, like, where are you? If you're real, you need to show up now because I don't know what else to do. I saw no light available to me. There was no hope because those comfort blankets, unhealthy comfort blankets, had taken me to that place. I didn't believe that there was any other choice. And so I just didn't want to be here anymore. And if I didn't want to be here, then Jacob certainly couldn't be here. And so it was in that moment, it was speaking that out to him. And so I guess the simplest advice I can give to people is just based on my own experience. Sometimes you don't feel like you can get angry with God, especially those that are Christian or have been walking with the Lord a long time. They feel that, you know what, you can't dare say anything bad to him. But I just remind them that Jacob, who my son is named after, then went on to be called Israel. He wrestled with God. Came out, slightly bit worn, but he wrestled with him. And I think that God wants us to wrestle with him. He wants us to tell him our fears, our anger, our frustrations. To me, that's what prayer is. Prayer isn't always just about asking for things. It's about communicating with him and saying, hey, hang on a second, where are you? And so in that kitchen that evening, I didn't know it at the time, but I was in prayer with him. So what happens when you enter into a place of prayer? You flood the atmosphere with the Holy Spirit. And so what happened in that kitchen, I now know was the Holy Spirit being filled in my kitchen through my prayer and communication, albeit angry, crying, screaming, shouting to him for hours.
Yeah.
How did I get here? Why am I here? How dare you put me here? I thought that you were supposed to show up. Where are you? If you're real, show up. But then ultimately at the end of all of that, surrendering it to him and saying, you know what? I have no idea how or what I'm supposed to do next. So I'll tell you what, if you're real, it's almost like a challenge. Right?
Yes.
If you're real,
Challenge God.
If you're real, I'm going to give it to you. And I meant it. Because the thing is, you can say all those things, but I meant it because I was all out of other options. And that's what I say to people. The world's comfort blankets will never, ever, ever bring you to a place that will give you the fulfillment, the answers, the life that you need. It will only be through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so I just surrendered it all and said, over to you. And so the next morning, I didn't get up and the angels were singing and everything. They're like, here's the blueprint for life. But what happened was I was able to release that anger and that frustration out to the Lord and say, over to you. And so I think the advice that I would give is release those fears, that anger, that frustration, that pain, release it out to the Lord. Because not everybody will have good friends, family around, but I can guarantee you, because I'm a living testimony of what that looks like, is that he will listen to you and he will answer you. What you have to decide is how patient you can be. Because what happened the next day was, like I said, everything wasn't rosy, but I had hope and a prompting from the Holy Spirit. That feeling or that voice in your head that you may think is you talking, or your conscience, whatever you want to call it. But what I was able to do was start to listen to that voice, and it led me to scripture. And so that was the first place that I started, was just reading scripture. And scripture continued to give me hope. And then from scripture, it gave me instructions. Iron sharpens iron, where one or two are gathered in my name, 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. I had to get connected to a church.
Yeah.
And that's the blueprint for life. The blueprint for our lives come from the Word of God.
Yeah.
It's an instruction manual that really brought me out of the place I was in, which was darkness, depression, and he told it to go. I didn't tell it to go. In that moment, I didn't have the strength to. God interceded on my behalf and said, depression, leave her.
Yeah.
It's not welcome here. Until I was strong enough to start to say that for myself.
Wow. So if someone is not a Christian, then
I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I live my life knowing that Jesus Christ has saved my life.
yeah,
And I believe that the way that I live my life now and the journey, the job that I have is about making people know that no matter what situation that you're in, no matter how bad a person you may think you are or what you've gone through or done, is that there is a Father God that loves you and he cares intimately about what's happening in your life right now. And his name is Jesus Christ. And so if you're trying to do this by yourself, yes, I would practically say, go and seek therapy. Get with a trusted circle of friends or a friend or someone that may be within your community that you may not necessarily speak to on a day-to-day basis, but people can identify good people. Yeah, there will always be somebody that you can identify that is a good person. You may not know them directly, but you may see them around, or you may know somebody that knows them. So if you don't have that person, I would challenge you to think about one good person that you have in your life and go and talk to them and tell them that you're not okay, and that you need help. Because speaking it out, for me, releases the truth into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the God that I serve, I believe he will bring people to people that are in pain and that are in need. And so that's what I say in terms of practical support. Get yourself to counselling, get yourself to a doctor that can help you. Do not sit and suffer in silence. But above all other things, outside of buying my book if you would like, but even above that is just start to ask Jesus to come into your life and into your situation. I guarantee you he will transform your life as he has done mine.
That's very powerful. That's very powerful. But if you're not a Christian, I'm sure you go to some sort of place where you all gather together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go to that place, find someone.
Yeah.
It could be a community leader. It could be someone that you trust and talk to them. Even volunteering helps because you're so much in your head. You're inside your grief. You're inside whatever loss you've gone through. Or when you go and give out to other people, it helps. It helps relieve some of that.
Absolutely. It's about not being alone.
Yeah.
Isolating yourself in times of grief, loss, depression, isolating yourself is the worst thing because you're captive then with your own thoughts.
Yeah.
You can't get perspective from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's the worst place to be when you're in that place. Yeah.
So you eventually found love again.
Yes, I did.
Hooray!
Yes, I did.
What advice would you give someone who maybe lost their husband or they've lost a relationship and they're fearful of now starting again or going into another relationship? They're like, oh, it probably all end the same. You know that
Did you?
fear.
I felt that way.
Yeah, you
all the
always
time.
think, oh, I don't want to start that because I know how it's going to end. You assume that it's going to end the same way. So what advice would you give someone who's in that place?
It's so difficult because I went through such a journey with it myself. Yeah. And I understand, first of all, I understand that process and I understand the thought of, being fearful that everything is just gonna end in the same way. So why give your love to someone else?
Yeah.
Again, why even open yourself up to even being hurt? So I understand that.
Yeah.
But again, what I'd say is you deserve to be happy and you deserve to have the opportunity to move on with your life. And you're not disrespecting, disregarding what has been. But life is about movement. It's about growth. It's about growing. It's about making memories. It's about educating, helping others through your own journey, just like I'm trying to do with mine. And so I just ask yourself, do you believe that you deserve to be happy? Because if you believe that, then there's a hope that it won't end the same way, and that actually you'll have a full and long and lasting life. But again, this might be controversial. Equally, I've had to come to the place of acceptance that, you know what, if whatever is mapped out for my life is another loss, God forbid, but I've had to accept that if it is, then I still prefer to live moments of happiness than to just live alone and a life full of loneliness and sadness and never trusting again. Again, it goes back to think about the things in your life that lead you to happiness. And if it's not doing that, then question it, because surely that's all we really all want to be, is happy and have happiness and love. And so I know it's probably not a definitive, this is what you should do or this is the advice, but I would just say that as I've done, lean into knowing that you still have a right to and deserve happiness in your life, and that bad things will happen. It's inevitable, right? I can't guarantee someone that this is what will happen if they make. I don't want to do that disclaimer.
There is no guarantee.
There's no guarantees in life. Yeah. There is a certainty that we're born and we die. Yeah. That's the certainty.
That is forever.
But everything that happens in between that, surely it's better. And there's that saying, right? It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And I used to think to myself, what a load of rubbish. But it's true, especially now leaning into a new love, and also knowing that the love that I have for Carlisle doesn't have to be and will not be exactly the same as the love that I have for Benny. And I think that's probably a really valid point to note, is that you can love in different ways and you can love more than one person. And that's okay. So just note that it will feel different. What I'm journeying now is learning to love in a new way.
Yes.
And that not in an old way, not comparing the two of them.
That's hard.
Not comparing situations. Learning to love my husband's good points and his challenging points. But that's life and that's marriage. And actually what I'm learning through this season of loving again, and loving this time now as a woman that believes in Jesus Christ, is following Jesus Christ, that I'm learning new things about myself, that I've had to also go back and not feel guilt for not feeling or doing with my first husband. So I went through a whole season where I was like, I wish that he had known the woman I've become. I wish he'd seen this part of me. And oftentimes saying to myself that my current husband doesn't deserve this version of me. Benny should have had this version. Oh no, he does deserve this version of me, by the way. Yes. But these are all things that you journey.
Yes.
And every person will be different. But definitely knowing that you deserve to love, and if loss comes again, that
better to have love.
Is that it is. I hate to say the cliche, but for me personally, I'm grateful that I've learned how to love again, even if that means, but equally changing my perspective on life and knowing that I'm not thinking about loving or losing. I'm just thinking about loving and enjoying.
Enjoying the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Being present in the moment.
Yeah.
Which is completely contradictory to, remember what I was saying right at the beginning?
Yeah.
Plan A, plan B, plan C.
Yeah.
I don't live like that anymore.
Yeah.
I do not live like that anymore. I have the plan that I believe God's got set out for my life, but I enjoy, and I'm trying to learn how to be more present in the time and enjoying the moments that I have in life now, and stop trying to think so far ahead, because you never know.
Yeah, you even miss this moment.
Absolutely.
You're thinking 10 years ahead, and you miss out on this that you have now.
Absolutely.
Wow. So you also talk about baptism, how it was a very important, pivotal moment in your life. So how did that act help you to release the pain and fear that you were carrying?
Oh, wow. It was such an instrumental moment for the starting of new. And it was the declaration, obviously, that I was making publicly to say I'm following Jesus. But I just remember knowing with all certainty that I was going to go into that water, and when I came out, whatever had been was getting left in that water, and it was an intentional act. And I've got a picture that is just so lovely that Carlisle took actually on the day of my baptism, where I'm coming out of the water and my hands are up in the air and I've got the biggest smile on my face because it felt different. I felt different immediately. And I think it was because of the work that I'd done before the baptism to say, this is what I'm going in here to do. And it was, remember I was saying before, the times where I couldn't say depression be gone, fear be gone, loss be gone, and God interceded on my behalf. It led me to the point of baptism where I was able to say those things myself. And so I released myself from depression. I denounced it. I said, God, release me. And it was very, very, very new. Now, what followed was a madness. But the enemy knew. He knew what was coming. And so he started to do all crazy things afterwards. But that was part of a new journey.
Yes.
But in terms of the old things have passed, behold, all things are new. And again, whether you're Christian or not, and you believe in other things, when you make an intention, when you put a stake in the ground and an intention and say, I'm making a choice and a decision to move forward and have some type of act, whether that is, as we talk about in the book, burning something, whether it is going on a holiday, whether it is writing a letter to your past, whatever that might look like, do some type of, I encourage people to do a final act to say, I'm saying that this is over. Being over does not mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward. They're two different things.
So not everyone will be going for baptism as a way to release or to, end the past. However, find a way, like she said.
Write a letter to your past. I mean, I've written a letter to my past so many times. My past must be like, leave me alone. Why he was writing to me? But write a letter to your past. Like I said, go on a holiday if you can afford it. Get some type of symbolic thing that represents that person, and burn it. Or do you know what? Even if you don't believe in baptism, go into the water in the bath or something like that.
Swimming pool.
Just a swimming pool. Just go in there and come out. But it needs to be a specific. I think it needs to be an act that's done for you to be able to intentionally say, this is what I'm doing to move forward. It could be as simple as just drawing a line. As they always say, drawing a line in the sand, but just drawing a line and saying that today I'm going to step over it. And I'm making a declaration and a decision to leave the old things behind and move forward into the new.
All right. So you've got those tips. Hopefully that will help you to, release that phase of your life and move into the next one. So the book, how did that come about, writing the book?
In COVID, when we all had so much free time. I'd always felt that I was positioning myself through my journey to write a book. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. And I think that in COVID, when we did have a lot of time, it started to start rumbling in me. And then I just made the decision and just said, you know what, I'm just going to start writing. I had to prepare myself because then it was like, okay, well, what am I going to write? And I wanted to make sure that the book was really authentic and real and raw. I had gone and read different books, and none of those that were bad, but they all talked about what to do after you've lost, the 7 stages of grief, and it didn't really talk about the journey.
The personal experience.
It didn't. And so I wanted to, not from the place of it's awful. There were lots of books that talk about they were just all so soft. And having gone through certain stuff, I'm thinking, well, hang on a second. In moments where I made some very poor decisions and choices, I felt bad, really bad about those choices. because I didn't read anybody else was going through those things.
So you think they edited it out of the book?
Yeah, well, I don't know what it was. For me, I just knew that it was important to tell warts and all. If I was going to do it, then I needed to be all in with it. And I had to be okay with people maybe looking at me differently, or reliving really painful moments so that I could write it. And so during COVID, a lot of it was written during COVID, but I didn't release it until a year or two later. But I had to spend a lot of time taking myself back to those moments. And so what that enabled me to do, it was cathartic. It really helped me process certain things, get it out. Even though I made a decision to let it go, I needed to get it out. And so the book was real therapy for me as well.
Okay.
There were so many times where I sat at my table in that same kitchen, just crying my eyes out, man. And just crying that pain onto the paper, because I wanted people to feel the moments that were painful. I wanted people to feel the moments that were happy. I wanted to feel the moments that were hopeless. I wanted people to leave thinking, I feel what she felt, and knowing her journey and knowing where she's at now, I have hope. Because really that's what the book is all about. It's about wanting to give people hope and know that joy can come after loss, even in the midst of all of that pain.
Yeah. And you can feel that.
Well, thank you.
You can. Honestly, guys, try and get this book. You'll be crying like, oh my God. And you know what? I could relate in some aspects. Although I did not lose someone,
Mm-hmm.
I lost a marriage. You don't realize that you're also grieving.
Absolutely.
Like you are grieving.
Absolutely. And I think I wrote that right at the beginning of the book, in the kind of introduction, is that this book isn't just for people that have lost a loved one or a partner.
Yeah.
It is the loss of a marriage, the loss of a childhood, the loss of a job, the loss of a friendship.
Yeah.
It could be, we lose in so many ways. Loss affects us all. And the process that we go through is different, but there are commonalities in that. And so I'm glad that you were able to get something, you know.
I was. And yeah, I do recommend the book. The other thing that I was thinking about while reading, like, you know, that took guts for you to ask your family about how they were feeling.
I wasn't prepared for some of the answers, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. There was a period where I felt like I needed to go back, and again, because of those years that were kind of lost in the grief, you realize that other people were grieving too. And they weren't just grieving for the loss of him, because he was a big part of our family. He used to speak to some of my family when I was in the US more than I spoke to my family. And I didn't find that out until afterwards. But I felt like it was important to go back and give them the opportunity to share with me how they felt, where they were when they heard, but also how they coped seeing me go through all of that, me, Jacob, go through all of that. So it was intentional, but I honestly was not prepared for some of the answers. I did not make it to the book. Oh my God, I just thought, okay, let me just leave it there. But it was good for them, because I think that they got an opportunity to say all the things that they wanted to say, but couldn't say at the time, but could now say in a place where I was able to receive it in the right way. I feel like if I hadn't have done it, it would have had lingering damage to relationships, because they were already strained. And so if I'd ignored it, I don't think that I would be in the place that I'm at now with my mum, especially. But yeah, and I reference it in the book, is that for those that have gone through a loss, like you said, whether it is the bereavement of somebody that you've lost, whether it's through the loss of a marriage, childhood, whatever, it's important to circle back with those people in your circle that journeyed it with you, to just find out how they are. And in some cases, say sorry, because you will have said things that you did not mean because of the pain that you were in. And so going back to say sorry was important.
I realized from that, like, how they were trying not to, because they don't know how to help you, because you're acting so, I got this, I got this slam. I'm a strong woman, I can manage this. But let people who are close to you help you. what I learned from that is be vulnerable enough to ask for help. Don't show that I'm superwoman, I can do all this, I don't need you,
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah.
So later you realize even for them, they didn't know how to help you because you're all,
Exactly.
strong.
Exactly.
Yet when you go back in the house, you're crying and you're sad.
Absolutely.
So if you're out there and you're suffering, struggling, please let your nearby close people help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were the surprising things that you learned about yourself?
What, from writing the book or from my whole journey?
From the whole journey and writing the book?
From writing the book, how cathartic it was for me, and how writing it really did usher in the season of closure for me. And as I start to talk about it more, like I said, I published it a number of years ago now, but I haven't really been doing anything with it. And I feel like it was because it was the Lord was waiting for the season where I'm able to now have these conversations.
I was actually worried that you're going to break down, but you're not too much, not too much. You've done well.
I think again because and there are different things that some people will ask me that I was like the moment that you asked me about Jacob, I hadn't thought about that moment for a really long time.
Yeah.
But in general, being able to communicate him and also speak from a place of authenticity and honesty to say that, listen, I may have written a book, but I'm still journeying through some things myself. I'm being okay to say that and not thinking that it needs to be like, it's great, guys, don't worry, I've got it all sorted. So that's probably been a surprise. In terms of the journey overall, just the growth in the new ways that my relationship with the Lord has just completely transformed my life. It blows my mind. I'm learning new things about my relationship with him. I'm learning new things about myself. He has completely transformed me as a woman. If people that know me, but the woman that I was and the woman that I am now are completely different, but equally the same. So my sister was saying to me the other day, is that I used to constantly be saying that, oh, that older Lisa's gone, she's no longer here, like she's dead, da 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 da. And my sister said to me one time, I quite liked the older Lisa. I know, but it's, what do you mean? She goes, there's parts of you that are still who you are. And I think it's now getting to a place of being surprised that actually she's right. There's parts of me that are exactly the same, and I'm happy to now start to show them again. They're coming out of me again because I'm in a place of happiness and joy. But equally, I've learned so much about myself, and I'm learning so much about myself through my relationship with the Lord, through relationships with other people, through what I'm now doing as a career. And I think so that surprised me, is that I'm now at a place where the old me, the new me, the me that's transforming are all valuable and actually make me whole.
Yeah.
And that's an exciting journey to continue growing and learning about myself and finding out new things about myself, growing in patience.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing. Realize how patient I've become.
Yeah. That comes at some point. You learn to give people more grace. Where it would have been like earlier, I would be like, oh, I don't want, like with all the attitude, and I'm like, I want this is not right, this is not right. Yeah. You learn then to give people grace. Like, oh, maybe she's going through something.
Exactly.
And you just leave it there.
Definitely.
But before you be like judging or no judgmental. But then now you're like, maybe they're going through something.
Exactly.
I'll give them grace.
100%. I also think it probably comes with a bit of age.
Yeah.
I got a lot more grey hair when I started this journey. That's for sure.
But then there is also where you say, you had to leave your job in US, you take a break,
Yeah,
and then start a new job, start a new career. How were you able to now build yourself back up again to this level in your career?
honestly, again, the Lord giving me strength and opening doorways, but I think practically being okay with starting again. For a long time, I was trying to operate like, trying to get back to what I had before, and getting frustrated when I didn't. And so then I got to a place where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start again. And again, the nature of the person that I am is it's a challenge. Let me see if I can do this again.
Yes.
But it has come with the reality of having to be obedient to what I believe God's calling is on my life, and the open doors that He has given to me. But yeah, it started with just being okay and saying, I'm going to start again. And that meant having less money than I'd ever earned. That 6-figure salary, gone.
Yeah.
And being okay with starting with earning less money than I ever learned, even in my early entry-level career.
Yeah.
And knowing that God is going to build me back up.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the skills that I have acquired in my previous careers to use to be able to grow the kingdom of God, but also just be open to learning new things and growing, and so yeah, just being okay with starting again, walking through doors that were open, even if it meant taking less money, or traveling further, and being patient, being patient for the allotted time. And so what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years is exactly that. I started off entry-level role, on less money I'd ever learned, I don't even know why I did that. But now to the national director of the Christian Broadcasting Network, moving us into a season of seeing 1 million people's lives transformed through my experiences. And this is the thing, nothing that you go through is ever wasted. Because what I'm able to do now is, in that moment where I encountered Jesus in my bathroom 3 days after Benny had died, and I didn't know what to do after that, what I'm doing now with the ministry is making sure that anybody that does make that decision has got the right resources, we can get connected to a church. All the things that I did later, after having gone through all of that, we're trying to make sure that we give people that opportunity right at the beginning.
Interesting. Any last words? Because that's everything is all useful.
Yeah, no, I think, but just thank you for having a forum where people can come and be vulnerable, be honest and open. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. You got something for it. And like you said, I think the most important thing is to note that this isn't just a book for people that have lost someone to grief.
Yeah.
It is a book for anybody that is dealing with or going through the loss of something. There are things in there that you will be able to relate to that can help you, and give you hope.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing to take away from this, is that whatever you're going through now, there is hope that you will be able to find joy again.
Well, thank you so much, Elisa. Thank you for being vulnerable. It takes a lot, and I hope that our Simply Moms family, have benefited from this, and I hope it will be helpful to someone out there. Thank you, guys. Don't forget to subscribe.
Like,
subscribe,
ring the bell for notifications.
Bye. Blah, 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 blah. Buy the book.